Have you ever wondered why some leaders seem to effortlessly reach their goals while others struggle to make any headway? Well, today's guest has the answers you have been searching for. Robert J. Hunt, the accountability guy and co author of Nobody Cares Until You Do, with over 20 years of experience as an executive coach in the Dallas Fort Worth area. Robert helps leaders break through barriers and achieve their full potential. He'll share his insights on accountability, avoiding overload, and how living out of your faith can enhance your well-being. Whether you are a CEO or just looking to boost your personal effectiveness, Robert's expertise promises to offer valuable guidance and inspiration. I'm your host, Ash, and this is a show where I interview proven founders and industry experts who share their stories, strategies, and insights to help you build, launch, and grow your business. So I hope you enjoy the show. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Great. Do you have a favorite quote, something that inspires or motivates you that you would like to share with our audience?
Well, I love to quote myself because then I can take ownership for it. But my favorite quote is one that I came up with when I wrote the book, which is life is better when you own it.
Mhm. Got it. Got it. Very deep, and you have to think like how. I mean, a lot of people don't even understand how to own your own life, right?
Isn't that sad? We've been living it for most of our lives, and yet we still don't know how to own it. I think the
Yeah.
problem is that we think we own it, but we're not. We're actually playing the role of a victim. And the more that I teach people how to be aware of that, the more they look around at their life and go, yeah, I do. I play a victim in that. Yeah, I do. I make excuses. I blame things. I say I can't fix that. And we do that very often, so much that we're comfortable with that and we don't even recognize it anymore.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So tell us about your book. Nobody cares until you do. Who is it for? What problem it solves for the readers?
We started to put this book together as we looked at our own lives and realized that we weren't living the life that we really wanted. And I
Hmm.
think sometimes we resolve to kind of give up and just say, I'll just try and do the best with the life that I have. But instead of really stepping back and saying, well, what do I want my life to look like? What do I want my company to look like? My career, my finances, my health, my relationships, all those things. You get to proactively decide what that looks like if you want to. But sadly, too many people have gotten to a place where they just gave up and they go, well, I'll just make the best of whatever I can. And we looked at our own lives in 2019 and we realized we weren't living the life that we really wanted. Our marriage was struggling. We were $90,000 in debt, not counting our house or our cars. We were frustrated. My business was struggling, had been struggling for years. And it affected our health. It affected our faith. It affected the joy in our lives, everything. And we just finally got to a place where we looked around and we said, look, nobody cares if we're broke and miserable and unhappy in our marriage or anything at all, unless we care enough to do something about it first. And it
Yeah.
was with that idea of pursuing the life that we really want and feeling incapable to do it that we realized that's a lie that we've been living. And we woke up and we realized, look, if we own this thing, we have the power to do something about it. That's what we say in our book. When you take accountability for everything in your life, you gain the power to change anything in your life. And that's freedom and power and hopeful and exciting. And so that to me was the catalyst for writing the book because I don't think people understand what it looks like to be truly accountable in their lives. We talk about it in the
Yeah.
book, but a
Yeah.
lot of
No,
times
definitely.
people are responsible, but they're not accountable. We could talk about
Mm.
that later.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And I couldn't agree more because I see, I remember those days when I was in a queue in Tesco's, just like you, as we have a big supermarket here in England called Tesco's. And we were standing like 2 meters away, I guess, for the, distance maintenance.
For
And then
COVID.
I finally reached to the checkout with three, pasta packets. And the lady told me, you cannot, because it's not allowed. You're not allowed to take three pasta packets. You're only allowed to take one because that is what government allows you to take. Because if we allow it to everyone to take three pasta packets, there will be nothing left for anyone. And
Hmm.
it's like, What? I can't even buy three pasta packets on my own wish. What am I doing with my life? It's like every single day living at home alone by myself, I ask this question. What did I do wrong that I couldn't even buy three pasta packets?
Well, I know there's some times where we have to adjust because it was a weird time when COVID hit. Everyone ran out of toilet paper at the store,
Yeah.
which was hilarious. Like we, for some reason, had to stockpile toilet paper. But there's a lot of fear that goes into people's minds. It could have been a great time where we all rallied together and we made a list of all the stuff that we have a whole bunch of and sent it off to our neighbors and said, "Hey, if you're low on toilet paper, come on by and get some rolls from me." But instead, we just kind of hoarded it. That could have been a really cool time to unite all of us. I think it was that way after September 11th. When the planes flew into the building, we didn't know who our enemy was. And
No.
so it was like this weird time of like everyone was frightened. But instead of hunkering down in fear, we said, okay, that's it. We're going to amp up and we're going to come together. We're going to fix the damage that was done in New York and DC and other places. We're going to rally together. Everybody put American flags on their cars. And it was this united front of we're all going to come together. In COVID, we just separated and we all kind of blamed each other. If you wore a mask, I didn't like you. If you didn't wear a mask, I didn't like you. If you voted for Trump, I didn't like you. If you didn't vote for Trump, I didn't like you. All these things were dividing us like crazy. And instead of having the opportunity to find a way to rally together and rise above it, we used it to cause us to become angry and to become disjointed. So, yeah, you couldn't buy three packets of pasta. That's the truth of it. But what else could you do? There's other
Yeah.
things you can do. You could start your own garden. You could go and find all your neighbors and say, I've got six packets of this. You want to swap for one of yours and get to know people. We had moved into this house as part of the story we tell you in the book. We moved in here at the end of March when the world was shutting down. We didn't know anybody. Nobody was coming out of their houses. So we bought the domain for our neighborhood. It was our street name.com. And we
Mm.
passed out flyers with bags of tortilla chips. And we said, hey, coming up on this was May by the time we got around to getting to know everybody. It was Cinco de Mayo, which is kind of a goofy holiday in America. And so we passed out a bag of tortilla chips to every house with a note saying, let's have a party, a virtual party. Join us on Zoom and have these chips and get something to go with it. And we're all going to get to know each other. So we just thought, we'll reach out to our neighbors and we'll try and find a way to come together so we could help each other. So it was a great time for us to reach out and build instead of just sitting in our house in fear and
Mm.
complaining. There's always something you can do to make the best of every situation.
Indeed. And that is the brilliant idea, Robert. I definitely would say that because I felt that loneliness. So tell us more about about you when you realize that you're broke, your business is not going great. What steps you took in order to get back to the race?
The first step was to own it. That's why my favorite quote is that life is better when you own it. We
Hmm.
looked around at every area of our life, and the one that was the most overwhelming was our finances. And so we said, how do we get out of this problem? And the best solution was to sell our house and to start over. We didn't
Hmm.
want to do that. We liked our house. It was huge. It had a movie theater upstairs. It had beautiful furniture, and it was a great place to live. But we knew there was equity in it, and so we made a tough decision to do that. And then when we sold the house and we moved into this rental in March, so by April we paid everything off. We were debt free. I remember having so much clarity in my mind and so much peace because the weight of that debt had made me see everything in a negative light. I looked at my
Mm.
business in a negative light. What if I lose one customer? I'll go broke. What
Mm.
if I do this? What if I do this? If the washing machine ever broke down, we were going to be in trouble. There was no money, and so the anxiousness and the worry was haunting us. When we
Mm.
finally took control of that and fixed it, then we looked at everything else in our life and go, well, the last couple of years have been tough on our marriage. Why don't we go to marriage counseling?
Mm.
Let's sit with someone and have some hard conversations. I gained so much weight. I was 265. I was feeling super unhealthy. Why don't I
Mm.
stop drinking? I mean, in COVID, there wasn't a whole lot to do except sit and have
Yeah.
bourbon and potato chips every night. And so, the habit just became a thing. And so I gained a ton of weight during that time. And so I started looking at things I wasn't happy with and decided I can do something about it because I took the
Mm.
hardest thing in my life and I kicked its butt. I can do everything else. It should be a lot easier. So that one thing that you tackle will give you the confidence to tackle other things.
Mhm. Got it, got it. And then so yes, I totally agree. Downsizing is a big deal for everyone. I understand that because you have worked so hard for life to get into that home, and then you had to make the hard decision. So just for the awareness, what kind of business you had, which you were very worried about, and then once you are debt free, what kind of steps you took or strategies you followed in order to get it back on the track?
Yeah, I've been running CEO peer groups for the last, well, at that time, I started in 2013. So it had
Mhm.
been uh, 6 years. Can't do math. And so all along, I've been running these peer groups. I bring together business owners and CEOs every month, and we have a meeting. We talk about our businesses and our challenges, and we help each other. And
Mhm.
the business had grown, but it was still small. But no matter how much I made, I always seemed to spend more than I make. And that
Mm.
was the common theme. And so once I got out of debt, I started looking with more confidence. I was willing to take a risk. I was willing to challenge my customers more and say, hey, this isn't good for you. And I wasn't worried if they got mad and decided to leave my business because I knew what they needed. I knew what was best for them and I was willing to take a risk. So my openness to risk went up. And with
Mm.
risk, there came better decisions and more results. I was more creative because I wasn't defeated and down on myself. I'd really started to believe I was a loser because everything in my life wasn't going right. And when I
Mm.
proved to myself I could do something, it fired me up and gave me the confidence to look at other areas of my life, which then I improved and got in shape and got our finances and went and got our marriage. And so it also helped me look at my business with more confidence. So when I went out to see a customer to talk about what I did for a living, I had such confidence in my heart, such boldness to sit in a room across the table from, I don't need this guy as a customer. If he doesn't
Mhm.
want to work with me, I'll just leave. But I used to be in there so desperate. I need this order. I need this business. I need this opportunity. I didn't need anything because I didn't
Mm.
have any debt. I could live on whatever I was making. It was great. So the confidence came up and the creativity came up. And then all the results were better. My business doubled in 2020 and it doubled again in 21. And so I just saw the Lord bless me with great results as I walked in obedience to what I knew he was calling me to do, which was to remove things that were making me angry at God and making me angry at my life and angry at my family and own it, take responsibility for that and fix it. And when I had that, I really changed my whole perspective about everything.
Got it, got it. So Robert, a lot of our listeners, they are founders, and they find themselves into this challenging situation as you were in, right? Now you had sort of like I understand that it was a hard decision for you to downsize and get the equity out, but not everyone has that kind of sort of like a solution which
Yeah.
is more obvious, right?
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. And mostly when I'm interacting with the founders, even though they do have like a 6 month of runway, they're very very worried about what's going to happen after that 6 month. And I totally get that when you're going like a CEO or a business owner or founder, and you're going to a customer, and I totally understand that how crucial this deal is for you, so
Yeah.
how desperate you become. Now, what sort of mindset you would suggest or advise to our listeners who are in similar situation, which mostly they are, getting into challenging situation, and how they can look at these challenges in a different way to get
The
it solved?
reality is that less things are under control than you imagine. I do a
Mm.
lot of executive coaching one on one with my CEOs and business owners. And they have a lot that floats around in their brain that overwhelms them. The potential for problems are everywhere. And no matter what you do, you're never going to have enough protected, stored up, prevented, planned for. It just doesn't have. Nobody planned for COVID. So what was
No.
the plan for that, right? Nobody plans for Enron to all of a sudden go bankrupt overnight. All these things that we put our hopes in, there's little under control, very little under control. Well, you know what's under control is how you respond to it. Life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of what you respond to it. And
Yeah.
so when you look at these things, all you have to do is learn to think clearly. And one of the problems that we have as leaders is we don't get our brains to have a rest. We don't
Mm,
take things and own them. And we worry about stuff that's out of our control, which just makes us worse. We always talk about the difference between stress and pressure is knowledge.
mm,
When you feel stressed and you're panicking, you're freaking out, you need to bring some knowledge into the equation and it moves you to pressure. Pressure is good, stress is bad. And when you look at all the things that could go wrong in your business, and there's plenty, the reality is since you don't have a control over it, all you have to do is keep your brain clear enough to be able to make good decisions in the moment. And we as leaders have to create a world where we don't have overload so we can think clearly, be creative, and be focused. And
mm,
that is one of the things that you get when you own your life. When you take control over the things, it gives you a plan towards where you're going. It doesn't fix it right away. Me
mm.
selling my house took a year, and it was a very tough to sell. It's a tough decision. I had to find a new place to move to, and then I had to rebuild my life after that was over. So it's a lot of work, but I would rather work really, really hard on not being a victim than to
Mm.
stay a victim and work really hard to survive underneath that.
Got it. Got it. And in your coaching business, then what sort of challenges these CEOs come to you? And so would you be able to share like maybe top three challenges which they share with you or seek solutions for or direction for towards them? And then what sort of path you advise them on the similar
Most of the
terms?
things that my clients talk about are very common to the leaders out there in the world. Their time, their people, and their cash.
Mm,
And those are the three things that haunt most people. There's a lot of things to worry about. I mean, if you're the owner of a company, you've got to know about cybersecurity and financial law and HR law, and you've got to be able to besides doing the thing you do for a living, whether it's making a widget or technology or running a restaurant, everything you have to do requires the knowledge of the thing you do. But on top of all that, you have to be an expert in HR, an expert in tech, an expert in cash, and that's hard. It's very daunting. So what we want to do is continue to find ways to learn from other people. There's plenty of data on the World Wide Web to teach you things, but what you don't have is the wisdom and when to use it. And that's why you really need to be in groups with other people, not the
mm,
buddies at the golf course or your neighbor or your family members, professionals who you can be radically open and honest with so that they can help you. When we have our monthly meetings, we talk about everything in our lives, personally and professionally, our business, our family, everything, because all that stuff starts floating around in our brains and we need to get it out so that we can hear the words be said to other people and it makes it real. And then those other people can go, oh, that's no big deal. You could take care of that. Here's what I did. And they help you. That's where accountability comes from, is being vulnerable. When you
mm,
tell someone I have cash problems, when you tell someone I have employee issues or my marriage is struggling, these things affect your ability to make good decisions. And when you declare it to someone, then it's real. When you keep it up here, nobody knows about it except for you, and all it does is build more anxiety. So leaders need to be in a group with other qualified people who are doing similar things, had the same experiences. They don't think the same way as you, but they're business owners like you are, or they've built and sold companies and they know what you're going through. So they can give you relevant feedback and input, not telling you what to do, but listening to what you're going through and sharing their own journey. That vulnerability, that builds real accountability in our lives.
got it. And I want to uncover this part of vulnerability and accountability because it's interesting to understand like how one person who or a founder or CEO of a company could get into this vulnerable situation and let's say if you don't have these kind of wise people around you, what are the ways to find somebody who can help you around it?
There's always wise people around you. You know, no, I mean, nobody lives like in a cave somewhere. I maybe you feel like all your friends are idiots, but let's take a realistic step back. No matter where you are, there are people who are wise. Hey, the janitor who cleans the office is wise. They may
Mm,
not know how to run your business, but they're not stupid. And if you are willing to learn from everybody, you can learn things. Your better results come from someone who's walked the same journey as you have. But my mom raised 5 children and never ran a business, and she was very wise. And I would
mm,
come to her and tell her some of my concerns and frustrations. And she would say, well, what does the Bible say about this? Or what does the Lord tell you in your heart? Or, when I used to raise you kids, these are one of the things I did. And she was very wise. She didn't know anything about business, but she
mm,
understood life and people and communication. So, at the very least, being vulnerable allows you to have someone who sees it from just a little different angle to give you another perspective. In our case, we're very blessed to have leaders who are successful business owners who are willing to be vulnerable, who intentionally commit to this group and come together every month to help each other. But at the very least, there are people in your world, if you're willing to be real, who will step up and share their story. They're not telling you what to do. They're just saying, well, when I ran out of cash, here's what I do. When I have problems with employees, or problems with my wife, here's what
mm.
I do. There's still relevance in the things they've gone through if you're listening and you're paying attention.
Got it, got it. And how do you let's talk a little bit more about accountability. Are there any tools, tactics, or techniques which you would suggest our listeners about accountability? How we can be more accountable to ourselves?
Yeah. One of the best ways to be more accountable is to surround yourself with other people who will listen to your situation and encourage you and share their story. We say
Mm,
in our book that no one can hold anyone accountable. You can only hold yourself accountable if you want to. Let's say
mm,
you and I decide that we're going to try and grow our business. And I say, Ash, how many phone calls are you going to make every day to grow your business? And you say, I'm going to make 10. Okay, well, then I'll go, I'm going to hold you accountable to that. People say that. You've probably heard that saying before, right? But then at the end of the week, I call you up. Hey, Ash, how did it go? How many sales calls did you make? And you lie to me and go, oh, I made 10 every day. But you didn't. You made only
mm,
two the whole week. I'm
mm.
not holding you accountable by asking you the question.
Yeah.
You could hold yourself accountable by going, Robert, I didn't make any phone calls. I just get so worried and stressed when I have to make a sales call. It freaks me out. And then I said, okay, well, let's work on that, buddy. Let's
Mm,
practice. You could do a sales call with me. Let's practice it together. Why don't I come by your office and I'll make sales calls where you're making sales calls and I'll watch what you do and I'll encourage you. And before we even start, we'll pray and we'll ask the Lord to give you confidence and peace while you're making calls. I mean, there's things I could do to help you, but at the end of the day, it's your thing. And so accountability only works if you want it. And so one of the ways to understand if you're doing it or not is by looking at the things that we do that ditch accountability and keep us as a victim. And we write about them in the book. When something comes up and you realize you're supposed to be accountable for it, the first thing you do is you blame someone or
mm.
something. The government wouldn't let me buy 3 packets of pasta. Now, that's a blame on them. You could choose something else. You could get 1 packet of pasta and 1 packet of something else, but you were
Mm.
frustrated because you didn't like someone telling you what you can't do.
Yeah,
And the
exactly.
emotion gets up there and, hey, don't tell me what to do with my life.
Mm,
Well, that blame just makes us mad, but it didn't fix the problem. The next
mm,
thing we do is we make excuses. Well, this is unfair. I don't know why this happens, and this whole thing's messed up. And we make excuses for why we can't get something done. If blame
mm,
and excuse don't work, then we just say I can't. Well, I can't do that. I don't know how to make sales calls. I'm not a good salesperson. And
mm,
then when you say I can't, you really mean I won't because you haven't tried everything. You've just tried as much as you feel comfortable with. So you go, I can't. And the whole world goes, oh, yeah, I get it, man. You're right. That is hard. You're right. And we support you because you can't, right? It's not like you're being a jerk. But the real word was, I won't. I won't
mm,
make a sales call because I feel uncomfortable. And then the fourth thing we do is we just wait and hope it gets better. And it doesn't get better, it gets worse. We waited and hoped every year that somehow our business would turn around and we'd pay off $90,000. How is that possible? When every year we spend more than we earn, how can we possibly pay off $90,000 in debt? It never was going to happen. And the waiting and hoping, like making minimum payments on a credit card or not talking to someone that you have an issue with and hoping it gets better, it doesn't get better.
mm,
So when you finally get to that place where you go, wait, nobody cares if my life is miserable, if my business is horrible, if my relationships are awful, nobody cares unless I care enough to do something about it first. And that's the turning point. It was a turning point in our life, and it's a turning point in everyone's life when they stop making excuses, blaming, saying they can't, or waiting and hoping, and they say nobody cares and they own it. That is when you gain the power to do something about it.
this literally reminds me. of a show. I don't know if you're aware of it. It's called Breaking Bad. I don't know if you have seen it.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. And in that show, I think there was a chemistry teacher, school teacher actually. He was brilliant with chemistry. And then somehow he ended up teaching in a school, which is considered as unsuccessful career choices for somebody who is so bright. And then he found himself into like some kind of disease, and then he was about to die. And then before dying, he decided, no, I want to take everything in my control. But then he started doing something bad, which is why the show is called Breaking Bad. He starts doing
Oh, ah,
making meth or something on the
okay.
show, but he makes so much money for like a couple of years, and then he, it's like karma. Like if you do something wrong, you get into the wrong thing. But indeed, in that part of that show, it says that until unless he started taking things in his own hands, it didn't actually progress anywhere positive. It was going like literally down the road.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't even recognize it in our own lives. And all of our friends look at your story and go, "Oh, I'm so sorry for you, Ash. That's really frustrating." And they feel bad and they say words that encourage you to stay as a victim. But really, they're helping you stay stuck.
Mm,
And in a caring way. They're sympathetic. But instead, they should go, "Okay, that sucks. What are you going to do about it?"
mm,
And we don't do that part. We just go, yeah, that sucks. Your boss is a jerk. Yeah, your spouse is annoying. Yeah, your kids are ungrateful. What are you going to do about it?
about it. Yeah. 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 You need to understand that. Great. And I want to go more deeper around, like, I want to know you as a person, and I want to understand your roots, etc. But before we do that, would you be able to share like a compelling case study that highlights how uh, a founder or a CEO leveraged your advice or directions you have given them and achieve success and solve their key business challenges? I would love to hear more about the specific problem they faced and the steps taken to implement your solution, and then the measurable outcomes they achieved.
Yeah, everything we talk about in our CEO groups is confidential, so it's hard to give you too many details. But
Hmm.
I could tell you that I've watched so many business owners face things that they did not anticipate.
Mm,
Partners who were crooked, uh, people who they sold their business to who lied to them and promised to do one thing. It's even in the contract, and they break the contract.
mm,
Employees, best friends who come to work for their company who steal from them and betray them. Um, Getting disease while they're trying to run their business and having to face the health challenges of cancer while you're still trying to run your business. All these things that we've gone through, divorce, kids being addicted to drugs. I had a client who had a son who he'd been trying to get him to get his act together as a dad with his son. And the son finally was just so bad, he had to take him to another state for a rehab. But since the
mm,
rehab can't keep him in, he had to stay in an apartment or hotel near that rehab in case the boy wanted to walk out. So he unplugged from his business for a month to go
mm,
live somewhere else. And so what happens is we as leaders, we don't have the time. We don't make the time to deal with problems. But then the problems get so bad that we're forced to do it in a way that we didn't plan for. If he had stopped what he was doing to slow down and spend time with that son incrementally early on in his life, maybe that son would not got to the place where he got, where he had to drag him out to rehab and then
yeah.
leave his company and just abandon it for a month. And
Mm,
so I want to encourage you that all of the things you're going through, other leaders have gone through. There's nothing new that ever happens. It's just a different day or a different color or a different flavor, but it's all the same stuff. People, time, money, it's all the same problems.
mm,
But you taking the ownership and being creative and getting good input can help you make your own decision. I could share case studies of people and the specific choice they made if they weren't
mm,
confidential. But the really truth of the matter is that it's only your story that matters. It's what
mm,
you're dealing with. It's your problem that matters. Everything else is just some other story. How many books have you read that outline some famous person's story or some leader story? And you're like, yeah, I want to do that too, but I have this problem. And yours
mm,
seems to be unique, and it's not. It's not. It's all the same stuff. We just need to own it. And I'm telling you from my own journey that when I decided I was going to own everything that came my way and not make excuses or blame people or limit myself by saying I can't, when I change that perspective, I look at every problem now as what's my plan? Let's get it done. It's so
Mm.
freeing. It's so powerful.
Got it. Got it. Great. So let's take a step back, Robert. Then I'm eager to learn more about the person behind this entrepreneur spirit. Can you take us back to your roots and share with our listeners about your upbringing, your childhood? How did your early experiences shape your journey and eventually led you to become a visionary entrepreneur coach? And were there any influences from your family or surrounding that played a significant role?
Yeah, I grew up in a very dysfunctional family, like probably I guess everybody in the world does. My dad was a very angry man who beat us kids and my mom many times growing up. He couldn't keep a job. He was an angry, broken man. And so I grew up with a lot of confusion as to what it looked like to be a man. And when I grew up, I got married and I had learned what I did not want to be, but I didn't know what it looked like to be a good husband or a father. And so I have had a long learning curve. I've gone
Mm,
through divorce, I've gone through bankruptcy, I've gone through health issues, I've lost my job. But all along, my faith in Christ has been the part that has kept me balanced and focused. And I've had to learn as I go along by surrounding myself with other people who would encourage me in my journey. I don't think anything I don't think anything in my childhood helped me with my career. I was lazy. I watched a lot of TV. That was
mm,
probably my favorite sport was watching TV. And it wasn't until I got out in the business world and I realized, oh wait, I have to do this stuff. Nobody was going to do it for me. That I just had to step up and get it done. And
mm.
my mom got remarried when I was 18, so I moved out and started my own life on my own and learned very quickly no one buys your groceries and no one cleans your house and
Yeah.
all these things that we had to develop. And I think my whole life was a series of mistakes that I learned from.
Mm,
I'm very thankful how God protected me and brought people in my life who would give me grace and help me to learn. I think what really turned in my life was when I got older and I started looking at what was the idea of excellence. I saw so many people who did the very least they had to do to get by, and I didn't like that feeling. I
mm.
think it was when I got into marketing as a career. I looked at companies that survived despite themselves. I think most companies survive despite themselves.
What were you doing marketing jobs like in early days of your career then?
Yeah, I graduated with a degree in advertising, spent 2 years in an ad agency, got an opportunity to bring a company from Luxembourg to America as
Hmm.
director of sales and marketing. Did that for 3 years, and then they got shut down by International Trade Commission, and that company stopped being able to do business in America. And I went to go do sales for 15 years into the printed circuit board market and did that for 15 years and then really spent 3 4 5 more years after that back in marketing with b2b marketing in telecommunications. And then I moved to Texas in 2010 and I was going to do my own marketing consulting, but I really didn't find people who wanted excellence. They would, hey, build me a website or build me a brochure or give me a trade show booth, but those were tasks. And
Mm,
marketing doesn't work if you want to do it as a task. Marketing only works if you do it as a strategy. Like
mm,
everything you are is marketing. The shirts, the paperwork, the tones of voice people use when they answer the phone, the kinds of product you make and how you go to market and the way that we treat everybody inside and out, that's all marketing. And
yeah.
and that's where excellence really was pumping in my brain. What would it look like to have a company that really did marketing with excellence and nobody wanted to hire me? It was really frustrating. And so I did that for a couple of years, did a lot of project work, and that's when I learned about CEO peer groups. And I
Mm,
realized I could still run my own business, but I could take who I am as a leader. And
mm,
my purpose in life is to help people remove the obstacles that keep them from being their best. So now I have a job that lets me do my purpose in life. I thought that's great. I got to go do that. And so I quit doing marketing in 2013 and I started leading CEO peer groups. And it was awesome because all I do all day long is help people remove the obstacles that keep them from being their best. And I get paid for it. It's
mm.
ridiculous.
Got it. Got it. And then how did you manage to convince yourself that you want to do this peer group coaching for CEOs?
It
Well,
was a
there may.
natural, it just made sense because that's my purpose. I couldn't think of a better job. When you
Mm,
really truly know your purpose, then everything is lame compared to that.
mm,
It's like this perfect thing, the perfect storm. And so that's why I always encourage my clients, do you know your purpose? Not just what do you like? What is your purpose? Why were you created? Ash, you are uniquely you. You live where you live. You at this time with the family and the journey you've had. It's very specific to you and the skills that you have and the passions you have. They are all part of that purpose. When you identify your purpose and you chase your purpose, you know exactly what to choose between this and that. This does not align with my purpose. Goodbye. This one is heading in the right direction. I'm going to chase that. It's so
mm,
empowering to make decisions in light of your purpose. That's where joy and wisdom comes from because you're chasing what you know you want to be.
mm. And Robert, throughout your journey and experience, then there must have been some kind of valuable lessons learned with all the mistakes, or maybe I'll put this question in a different way. Could you reflect on your experience and tell us about one mistake or a setback that you encountered along the way that you now consider maybe not a regret but a lesson learned? And additionally, what advice would you give our listeners based on this experience?
Yeah, I think I learned the hard way the dangers of not being accountable to people. I know it's all about accountability, but I'm not doing
Yeah.
that just because I wrote the book because I live out this whole idea of accountability. So the book
Yeah.
needed to be written, but it is my passion. I didn't let myself be accountable to anybody or anything. I had a
Mm,
business for years, and if I felt like working, I work. And if I didn't feel like working, I wouldn't work. And if I knew I should make 10 sales calls a day and I didn't want to make any sales calls, I wouldn't make any sales calls. And then all of a sudden I'd be out of money. And then I would blame or make excuses or all this stuff. But it was all me.
mm,
I wasn't telling anyone, here's what excellence looks like in my life so that they can go, well, how's it going? Show me your numbers. Let me see the list of how many phone calls you made. But instead, I'd say, yeah, I was really busy this week. I went to a networking event and I made some sales calls. Not how many, but you spin it as a owner. You spin it so that you sound important or smart or successful. But all it does is keep you held a prisoner to the failures of what you're doing. And so I
mm.
think because I didn't allow myself accountability, I lost a lot of years that could have had an impact on the world. It took me 6 years before I really started seeing a change in my business. That's wrong. Now I know most businesses fail in the first year, and certainly the balance of them fail the next couple of years. So I guess I'm successful because it hasn't failed yet, but it's been a rocky road. And if I'd been honest with myself and allowed someone else to know my struggles and my problems, I could have solved it way quicker, and it would have been a lot more fun because I would have not spent so many years in frustration.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? It does. I worked in cloud computing, IT, right? And I went back in the days when cloud computing was very new. Um, I went to a sales organization where I was looking at um, their sales pipeline. And what I've learned there is every single person has to make calls. They used to get the A4 size paper with the numbers on it, and then they have to make a call. The challenge was that once you make a call, like you dial a number, until it connects with the person who is like sitting next door,
It doesn't count.
next side, it doesn't display a reference number on the small weird screen,
Yeah.
and that reference number needs to go on the right of that list, which was really weird for me. It felt like a robotic work, I wasn't doing that. I was there for cloud solution. But then when I looked at it, and I was like, why do you guys have this? And they said, oh, if you don't have this, then these salespeople will not make any call. They just put a tick mark against every single
Yeah.
number, and then
Yeah.
it doesn't give us the output. It's like, okay, but how does that reflect the productivity of overall a company? Because if you're not in your heart, you're not making the call because you want to, then you're not doing the job as per the high standard, I guess.
Well, it's an attempt towards trying to create a spirit of accountability. And the
Yeah.
fact that they can't just do a check mark, they have to have a reference number, but it doesn't guarantee that they were on the phone call in a good way. Hey, you don't want
Mhm.
to buy our stuff, do you? We don't
Yeah.
know. We don't know what their conversation was like. Just because they got a reference number doesn't mean that they finished the phone call, did a good job. What if they showed up and they had a big fight with their spouse before they got to work that day? What if their
Exactly.
health was bad and they were tired because they were up partying all night? What if they were worried about their mom's health and they were just distracted and the person next to them bug them and they're in a bad mood? That doesn't mean the phone call was good. So this is the thing. You can't make anyone else accountable. And we as business owners have got to stop trying to force and or legislate or create some kind of check method to good behavior. Instead, we've got to inspire people to want to reach their goals. It wasn't
Mhm.
until I really cared for me that I tried hard, that I not only made a sales call, but I was excited to talk to the person, that I couldn't wait. Hey, listen, I want to talk to you about your business. Are you reaching your goals? Are you having fun in life? What holds you back from being your best? And I was excited and it came across in a phone call. That's when my business took off. But before then I would be timid, afraid, doubtful, insecure, scared, and
Mm.
it would show in my phone calls. And so my sales results were horrible. So I think you have to really start figuring out ways that you create a world where people want to self motivate, where they want to do their best because they are passionate about living out their purpose through the place where they work. They come to work every day and either love their work, which most people don't, or they love the place they work or the people they work with. So if you got really boring, mundane, put the screw on a thing, turn it and set it down all day long, that'd be a horrible job. Then make it a place where people feel loved and cared for, and that they people they work with are laughing and there's focus and we're doing our best. You either love the work you do or you love the place you're at. But either way, if you don't have something there, they're going to just show up and do the very least and get the hell out and get their paycheck. And that's
Got
not motivated leaders. That's not productive people. That's not good results.
Yeah, they're just robots then.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, great. Well, I'm enjoying this conversation so much, but we are limited of time, so let's get into the quick fire lightning round. If you're ready, we have got
Sure.
six quick fire questions for you, and you can answer them as quickly as possible. Great. Okay. Number one, what are the three tools we can use in 2024 to make ourselves accountable on a daily life?
Number one, surround yourself with people that you can be real with, really
Mhm.
vulnerable and real with. Write it down. Number two, write it down. There's something powerful about taking it out of your brain and seeing it on a piece of paper. And when it's real, when it's on a piece of paper.
Mhm.
And then continually challenge yourself by talking with that person, looking at those numbers, and be honest with yourself in the process. It is work, but it's also work to stay stuck. I think I'd
Mhm.
rather have hard work going somewhere than hard work staying stuck as a victim.
Yeah, yeah, correct. What book would you recommend to our audience and why?
Certainly, I'd recommend Nobody Cares until you do. It's available on Amazon, or you can go to nobodycaresbook.com.
Mhm.
But if you are looking for something that I did not write, there's a great book called Margin. It's by Richard Swenson, and it talks about how the world has become overloaded in their quest for never enough. And because
Mm.
of that, we live lives in overload. I teach my clients how to avoid overload by creating room in their world for things to go wrong, and they always go wrong. And so, if you live a life with margin, room for the things that go wrong in your life, you avoid overload. And so I've learned this years ago and I teach it to all my clients. It's a really good book, Margin by Richard Swenson.
Got it. I will add it into my list now. What's one attribute or characteristic in your mind of a successful founder?
Mm, they're constantly learning. I think
Mm.
the world is changing so fast. If you created a business or invented something and you started a business a couple years ago, it has changed. The world has changed. It changes hourly these days, but you
Yeah.
need to be constantly learning. And that doesn't just mean reading an article in the paper once a week. That means knowing what is critical to your business success and looking at that and see how that has changed. Do you understand the market? Do you understand the customer's needs? Do you understand your employees? The workforce of today is very different than the workforce of years ago. And if you are old in your mindset and you're trying to run a business with younger people, you are going to fail. And so you constantly need to learn and understand and adjust because everything is changing.
Got it. Got it. What's your favorite personal productivity tool or habit?
Productivity tool. I'm going to go back to writing things down. I think there's some power in having things written down. I use my calendar as a way
Mhm.
of keeping up with my schedule and to remind me of things, but I journal in the morning. I have to start my day spending time with the Lord, reading my Bible, and getting my head clear because I wake up and there's a lot of things going on. And sometimes I feel overwhelmed. So when I sit and I write them down, by writing them down, I feel peace because some of those things that are spinning around my head are lies. I need to get them out of my head and onto a piece of paper and go, well, that's not true. That's not true.
Mm.
Get a grip,
Yeah.
man. Let's go. And then it
Yeah.
helps me stay focused and not get overwhelmed.
Yeah. Writing helped me out too. I always do it a night before so that, when I have thoughts, then it's
Yeah, dump it
included.
all out before you go to bed. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What's a new or a crazy business idea you would love to pursue if you had time?
Tattoo removal.
Interesting.
Because the
Yeah.
whole generation of people who have been digging tattoos these
Uh,
last years, I think if we can have a technology that would remove them all, I've seen some people try and cover up tattoos that they regretted, and it looks even worse when they try to cover up. I think really efficient, high tech tattoo removal will be a very big business.
awesome. Yeah, that would be a good one. We need just the technology.
Yeah,
Okay. Last but not least, what's an interesting or a fun fact about you that most people don't know?
I've been on 4 television shows. I grew up in
Wow.
Southern California. I was on Family Feud. I was on the
Hmm.
Newlywed Game with my first wife. I was
Oh.
on a remodeling show for our home where we remodeled our backyard and
Mm.
some other cheat TV show that didn't last very long. But I've been on 4 different TV shows.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah. Growing up in Southern California, you just got to walk down the street and someone will say, "You want to be on TV?" And you're like, "Okay."
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome, Robert. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story, unpacking some, years. If people want to check out your book or if they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do it?
Yeah, the best way for your show is I opened up a special domain called Nobody Cares Pod, as in
Hmm.
podcast. Nobody Cares Pod.com. And if you'll fill out the contact form and you'll put in the code word, what did we put? Leaders. I think no, sorry, founders. Code word founders. If you put in the code word founders and you fill out that contact form, I will mail you a copy of my book for free to the first two
Awesome.
people who fill that form out. That way you can meet some of the listeners who are listening to your podcast. I'll copy you on that.
Yeah.
But I also I want to know when people read the book. I want to know how is this changing their lives. Email me. My information's all over the website, and I want to
Mm.
talk to you and encourage you. Make sure you take the satisfaction assessment that's in the book. It's critical to getting the most out of the book.
Awesome. Robert, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your inspiring journey and the impactful work you're doing. It has been absolute pleasure having you on Founders Podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Founders Podcast. I hope you found our conversation with Robert insightful and inspiring. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to subscribe to our podcast and stay updated on our future interviews. Stay inspired, stay motivated, and keep building.